Welcome to a new tutorial series. I'm going to be making a game using the free version of Construct. It's been asked for a lot by my followers and subscribers, and today we're going to make a start on making a top-down space shooter using only what we can in terms of events using the free version of Construct 3. So let's open up Construct, create new project. I'm going to name this free version, and I'm going to say SS, which stands for Space Shooter. It's going to be retro style. I'm going to leave the viewport size at 320 by 180, and I'm going to leave it at orientation landscape. Start with event sheet, optimize for pixel art because we are going to be doing some pixel art. Create, and then we get given our layout. So you can see this dotted line around the side. This is our viewport. The size of the canvas here, this is our level, and we're going to keep it the same, I think. Now, I don't know where this is going to go. It's going to be a bit like the experimental platformer tutorial series that I did already. I'm going to basically make it up as I go along, and by the end of this series, we're going to have a pretty good top-down space shooter with a bit of polish, using only what we can in the free version. So what I need to do first is log out of my account. Now I'm in the free version. I'm only going to be able to use things in the free version. So here we go, let's see what we can accomplish. First thing we need to do is make a sprite. Double click. Then you get all these wonderful options. Under the general categories, double click on sprite, click anywhere you like, and we get our first free edition limit. Not available in the free version. Onion skinning, onion skinning. That's because I had onion skinning defaulted on. Okay, so we can't use onion skinning, so if we're going to be animating anything, we're going to be animating blind. So first thing we need to do is resize this this canvas. So we're going to do 16 by 16. Click OK, and it's going to shrink it down. Now we need to create a player sprite. To start with, we are going to just do, let's pick a color. Let's say blue. Oh no, let's go green. Everything's green on my channel. But just to jazz it up a tiny little bit, let's create a very dark green color. Select the line tool and just draw a box around it, and then go a lot lighter, and I want to hue shift over towards yellow a tad, and we're going to draw a highlight at the top, and then we're going to hue shift back towards blue and go a little bit darker. In fact, let's pick the green first, go a little bit darker, and then hue shift a little bit towards blue and pop that down at the bottom. That'll make things a little bit more interesting. Now select the origin point. It's going to be right bang in the center, and that's exactly where we want it because we're going to be rotating this thing using the mouse, and I want it to rotate around that central axis point. Perfect. There's our little sprite guy. There's our player. You can see he already looks reasonably decent because we've got some highlights and some shadows on there. Next thing we need to do is give this guy a name. So if you click on him, you can come up into the left where it says object type properties. You can call it whatever you like. My naming conventions, I like to call everything that's a sprite SPR, and then underscore, and then the name of the sprite, which will be player. And now I want to give him a behavior. So in the same properties panel here, you can click on behavior. We can add a new behavior. He currently has no behaviors. And then I'm going to give this guy the rotate behavior. Now if we click on him and we click preview, preview's not available. Okay, so we can't preview it. That's fine, we don't need to preview it, we know what we're doing. We've got the behavior properties over here, so you can see it's defaulted to a rotate speed of 180, acceleration to 0, and it's default enabled, which is what we want. We just now need a way to control it, and we're going to be using the mouse. So in order to use anything in Construct, you have to add it in. So double click, find the mouse under input, double click, and now we've added the mouse. So now we need to go to the event sheet and tell this thing to turn based on where the mouse position is. So open up the event sheet, add an event, and I'm going to go system, I'm going to say every tick, and I'm going to add an event, and I'm going to say player, and I want to set the angle, or I want to rotate towards position. And the position, you can leave degrees at 0. The position is going to be wherever the mouse is, so we can start typing in mouse.x under the x-axis, and mouse.y under the y-axis. And now when we hit play, oh, I've got the rotate behavior on. In fact, I don't think we even needed to add that. Let's go back. Ignore what I just said. Delete the rotate behavior because that's just messing with things. And now he doesn't rotate towards the mouse. So let's just change that. So double click back in here, go back. Let's say set angle towards position. And this is going to be mouse.x and mouse.y. We'll get there in the end. You just have to trust me. There we go. Now he's rotating towards wherever the mouse is. But he doesn't seem to be doing it too well, does he? And he's kind of quite distorted. So let's change it again. What other options do we have in here? Let's say set angle. And then in here, because we're going to use an expression, we're going to have to type in angle, open brackets, and then it's going to ask us for 4 different positions. And the first position is itself. So it's going to be self.x, comma, self.y, comma, mouse.x, comma, mouse.y, and then close brackets. That's better. And now it's always following, you can see no matter where the mouse is, it's always following us no matter where we are. So now what we need to do is add a background, because I don't like the background as it is. I want to make it a different color. So let's go over to the layer. And remember, we're only going to get a certain number of layers because we're in the free version, so we need to be very frugal with what we're doing. I don't like space to be jet black. I think it should have a bit more of a purple tinge. I just feel that, that's just how space should be. So we're going to use that purple tinge as the default color, and we will add stars and twinkly bits when we start polishing it up later down the line. But what I think I will do, because the layout size is quite small, I'm going to reduce the size of this sprite here, because I don't like the way it goes a little, the lines go, well, not pixelated, but you can see they don't look so great when we rotate. So let's just delete it all. I still want to stay with the greens, but I'm going to do a triangle because, asteroids. There we go. And then I'm going to fill that triangle with that green color there. And again, like we did before, I'm going to hue shift over to yellow, and I'm just going to do a little bit lighter. I'm going to do the left hand side yellow, and then I'm going to go back and select this green. I'm going to go a little bit darker, and I'm going to hue shift towards blue, and then the other side is going to be blue. And again, the origin point needs to be right in the middle. Now, the way the angle system works in Construct is everything faces towards the right 90 degrees as default. So I'm going to rotate it round, because otherwise when I rotate the mouse around the sprite, it's going to point in the wrong direction. So just hit that little circle, that kind of rotate button. It will automatically rotate right, and now you can see it's pointing in the right direction. But actually, the reason why it's pixelated there, I don't think it was because of the size. If we go into the properties, if we go to the properties tab, just click on the layout, click on view, change full screen quality to high. I think that should solve our issue. There you go, much better. But still, I kind of like it that small anyway, because it was quite big before. So let's go with the triangle. Right, now we need to create some enemy sprites. So double click, let's add in another sprite. Click on it here. The enemy sprites I think will be 16 by 16. They're going to be bigger. And to start with, I'm just going to color these white with a kind of tint of yellow. And I'm going to round them off into a circle. So I'm going to get the eraser tool. I'm going to take the corner off of each one. And then I'm going to take one more again off of each side. Like that. And then I'm going to go a little bit darker, and I'm going to hue shift it towards orange, and I'm going to draw that line along the bottom and right hand edge, and then I'm going to go all the way white, and I'm going to highlight the left and top for no other reason than I think it looks more interesting than what we had before. And there it is. Let's give it a name, SPR underscore enemy, I could spell enemy. And what we're going to do with these enemies is we're going to spawn them in off screen, and then we're going to get them to move at different speeds towards where the player is. And if they touch the player is going to die. But I think what I'll do as well, I don't know whether we should give the player the ability to move around this space, because if we don't need to have a layout this big. It can simply just be this one and they can just spawn in. But I kind of like the idea of the player having a bit of movement on him. But I don't know, let's see, we can figure that out as we go along. And if you're following along, you can let me know in the comments what you think. So what we need to do now is get these enemies to spawn in randomly outside the layout. So in order to do that, we need to kind of know the dimensions of this thing. So the size on the width is 640, and that starts at 0 up here in the top left hand corner and goes to 640 all the way over there. Remember, the viewport is 320, which is just there. Anything above here is going to be minus on the y-axis, because we go down. As we go down, we increase the y number. As we go up, we decrease it. So it's going to start at 0 in the top left, and it's going to be 360 by the time it gets down here, which is the height. So let's go back into the event sheet, and we've got 24 events remaining. So we're going to add an event, and we're going to say system, and I want to go down and say every X seconds. Now we can hard code this in and say every 1 second we spawn an enemy, but I want to use a variable to control this. And the reason I want to do that is because I want the time that these things spawn to change based on our score. So as we get a higher score, I want the difficulty to increase. So I'm going to right click and add a global variable, and I'm going to call this spawn speed, and it's going to be a number. And it's going to start off at 3. And now I'm going to say, instead of every 1 second, I'm going to say every spawn speed seconds. So now when we change spawn speed, we're going to change the rate at which we spawn. So it's going to be every 3 seconds to start with, and then as we get a little better at the game and we start shooting these things, it's going to be every 2 seconds, and then it's going to be every 1 second, then every 0.5 seconds, and so on until the player can no longer keep up and eventually has to die. So every spawn speed seconds, we're now going to spawn an enemy. So we're going to say system, and we're going to create an object. And that object is going to be the enemy. It's going to be on layer 0 because that's the only layer that we have. And the X and Y positions, let's leave them at 0 for now, but I think they're going to have to be, it's going to have to be a random position between 0 on the Y and 360 on the Y. So let's put that in now. So let's go Y. Let's do random open brackets. So this is going to tell the system to pick a random position, and it's going to be, I don't want to go 0 because then the top half, in fact no, let's go 0 and 360. That's 36. 360. And then on the Y, we're going to say random between 0 and 640. But that's not going to work because that means they're going to spawn randomly. If I play it now, they're going to spawn randomly all over the shop. Every 3 seconds they're going to spawn. And don't forget, they can spawn outside of our viewport. So there you go, there's one spawning in right there. And another one in there. That's what we don't want. We definitely don't want that. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to create some spawners. Yeah, let's double click. Let's create a sprite. Let's pop it up here. This one just needs to be 4x4, and let's just color it a bright red. And we're going to call this one SPR_spawner. And we're going to make a couple of copies of these, so we're going to add an instance variable. The instance variable is going to basically be its ID. So I'm going to type ID, leave it as a number. So each one of these is going to have a different ID. So we're going to say ID1, ID0, change ID1 over here in the instance variables. You can hold down Control and drag out a copy. I'm going to say ID2. So we're going to have 3 along the top. And then I'm going to drag this one down to here because this is outside of the layout, remember. This is going to be ID3. Drag another one out. going to be ID 4. Drag another one out, and that's going to be ID 5. So now, what we're going to tell the system to do is every spawn speed seconds, we're going to pick one of these, and we're going to spawn in one of these. And the way we're going to do that is in the event sheet. So we need to create our first sub-event. So select the whole row and push B on the keyboard for a blank sub-event. We can delete this. So what we're saying now effectively in this line is every spawn speed seconds, and then underneath here we're going to say system, and we are going to say, no we're not, we're going to say enemy spawner, and we're going to say spawn another object. And if we just start typing that in at the top in search, no, double click, sorry. Enemy spawner, we need to choose the one that we want first. We're going to say compare instance variables. We need to compare that ID. And remember, we've got 6 of them and we start on 0. So if the ID is equal to 0, and then we need to select this, copy and paste it out a few more times and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Oh no, just be 5 because 0 is the first one, and 5. So we're accounting now for all 6 of our spawn points, which are the top ones and the bottom ones. So now we're saying every spawn speed seconds, if the ID is equal to 0, then we're going to spawn in an object. But I'm just thinking now, we're going to need to create some kind of random number generator to pick one every 3 seconds. So I'm going to need another global variable to control that. So right click, we're going to add a global variable, and we're going to call it spawner RNG, and it's going to be a number. So now we want to say every spawn speed seconds, we want to calculate a number in the spawner random number generator. So let's add the action. We're going to say system, we're going to come down to our global variables, and we're going to set the value of that random number generator, and we're going to get the system to pick it. So we can use an expression called choose, and we can tell the system to choose 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. So every spawn speed seconds, our random number generator is going to set itself to one of these 6 numbers. We're going to need these, but I'm going to need to add in something else now. So on where it says ID equals 0, don't select the whole thing, just select the section here from the text alongwards. So don't click on that, just click in the middle, push C on the keyboard, and then we're going to add a condition. So we're going to need to check that random number generator variable. So we're going to say if the spawner random number generator is equal to 0. So now this action is only going to occur if these two things are correct. So if our spawner generator number comes out as 0 and the ID of the sprite is 0, then we're going to get the spawner to spawn another object. So you can just start typing it in at the top, click spawn another object, and that's going to be an enemy, and that's going to be on layer 0, image point 0. Great. Now we can hold down Control and drag that out into all of these, and then we're going to just copy and drag down that and change it to a 1. So hold down Control, drag it down, make sure it's just sitting in the same block, change that to a 2, drag it down, make sure it's sitting in the same block, change it to a 3, drag it down again, change it to a 4, drag it down again, and change it to a 5. So now we're accounting for all possible outcomes in this random number generator, and we're linking it to each of our spawn points around the player. Now we need to give this enemy sprite a behavior, and that behavior is going to be move to. So if you scroll down here, you can see under movement we've got move to. That's going to enable this sprite to move in a direction that we tell it to. So on back on the event sheet, we've got 17 events remaining. We should be fine. Add an event that's going to control the enemy movement. So we're going to say enemy, sorry, that's a lie. System, every tick. Because we want the enemy to be moving to us immediately when it's created, every tick basically means every frame of the game. So every frame of the game, we want to tell this enemy sprite to move towards wherever the player is. And we need to go down to our move to, because we've added this in, our move to behaviors. We're going to need to move to an object. And that object is going to be the player, image point 0, and it's going to be direct. So now every tick, this thing's going to move. Now, if we just leave the original sprite on screen, when we hit play, that's going to move to us. And now every 3 seconds, another one's going to spawn in. So that spawned in from that one, that spawned in from that one, and they're all just overlapping us, and that's not what we want. We need them to be destroyed, and we need to be destroyed if they touch us. But I'm going to leave it there for now. We've got quite far in this first episode. In the next episode, we're going to code in just what I just said, and we're going to make it a little bit more of a playable game, so we can win and so we can lose, but that's all coming up in the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.